everybody is remembered by their names. So it is always the case that it's the work you do rather than what you have got. Well, I think there is a system to solve disputes, and you should utilize that. And my mother, of course, more than me, is very firm on the ground that she stands, and I'm firm on the ground I stand.
Today on the Expressions podcast, we are truly honored to welcome a guest who embodies legacy, leadership, and modern relevance. He's a royal by lineage, but also a thinker and a voice of India's cultural renaissance. Joining us is none other than Yaduveer Krishnadatta Chamaraja Wadiyar, the 27th head of the historic Wadiyar Dynasty of Mysore. An Oxford-educated royal with a global outlook and deep roots in tradition, he bridges the past and present like few others can. From preserving heritage to engaging with the pressing issues of today, His Highness brings a unique perspective to power, responsibility, and identity in the 21st century.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Not at all, my pleasure, and thank you so much for having me.
Let's go back to your early 20s when you were crowned the Maharaja of Mysore. What was going through your mind when you first found out that you were going to be the heir to a historic empire in the middle of your last semester in college?
Well, I mean, obviously it was a shock to the system, to put it lightly. It's a big responsibility, and I had no, obviously, prior knowledge about it, or obviously the tragic sort of demise of my father, and then subsequently, obviously, there was a lot of speculation as to how this would move forward and if it would move forward, etc. And my mother, I think, very bravely said, no, it has to move forward, and that the tradition is the most important. So she essentially took a person who obviously she knew me very well in the sense that I was her grandnephew, but nonetheless, she didn't know a person as intimately as you should know to be a son. So she took that plunge, and I think all credit to her to putting her trust in me. And I think that gave all the necessary impetus for me to follow through and do the necessary in order to fulfill that role from my part as being a son. I think she still carries the weight of the entire heritage. She follows through not just on the legal side, but all the pressures that come with being a private household that is expected to publicly engage. So she moves through that very well, and I think following in her footsteps, we've been able to create our own little role there, and I think she so far has been very accommodating and understanding of even what is a modern outlook from my side. And it has those challenges always will be there. But I think as long as there is an understanding that it has to evolve to a certain extent, but stay true to its original form, this will last forever.
So you're saying that you actually got to know the same time as the public did?
Largely, these are all private matters now.
Yeah.
It's really, from a technical sense, shouldn't be of any concern to the outside world because we're a private family now. But given, of course, the goodwill that the family has, naturally the association we have from being the rulers of the erstwhile state, it has a certain level of some curiosity from the people and a certain expectation. And for that sake, obviously, it was there was a lot of speculation and a lot of wanting to know as to who would or how this would move forward. And so while things were moving at the background and not really anyone got to know, eventually it leaks out, as is such things. And maybe I must have been a couple months before the public knew at large. And my mother had a press meet done, and she then made it public. So,
did you have any fears or apprehensions or any challenges when you were going through this?
Well, naturally, I mean, I was much younger then, and had no expectation of having any even semi-public life, leave alone public life. And you having the scrutiny of a huge chunk of society, might even be as just Mysore city itself, is a tremendous amount of weight on one shoulder. So that aspect of it, certainly you were always had some level of apprehension about. But I think it was all very good for my personal growth as well, because being such a introverted person and really not at all socializing too much, to have to fill in those shoes, it gave me new insight, and I think bettered me in many ways as a person. So it's natural to have these fears and some sort of apprehension, but I think there's tremendous value in overcoming them.
Absolutely. So, were you planning to return to India after your studies?
I didn't know if that was immediately after studies, maybe after some time. But the idea was always to come back home. And all the time that I was in the US, it was always, home was always here. So I think even now, many people who've settled abroad and are leading very fruitful lives abroad, the notion of home is still here. So that I think never leaves being an Indian. And certainly in my case, given Mysore and Bangalore and Karnataka in general, I could never see myself being anywhere else in the long run. So that was always the goal. And I'm grateful for that experience of being in the US again. Gave me a lot of insight and helped me grow. Because obviously a metropolitan child or a kid from here in Bangalore, you're always have certain privileges here, whoever you are. I mean, you have an abundance of labor here, your staff, you have ease of moving around school and all that. Getting there and taking the plunge into being completely self-reliant was a culture shock in of itself. So that all those aspects I'm very grateful for. And then organizing myself as an individual also was a very, I think, insightful thing.
So, who was YKC Wadiyar before he became the crown prince?
I was renamed Yaduveer Krishnadatta Chamaraja Wadiyar in 2015. Prior to that, I was Yaduveer itself, but Gopal Rajars. The Arsu community is the what is the left of the Kshatriya class in Karnataka, and we are some 40,000 in number only. They used to be obviously various ruling families, which all identified as Arsus. Arsu in Kannada is just ruler. And they were small pockets all over, and they were all unified under the Wadiyar family. And they were all resided in Mysore itself. We abolished all the zamindaris and the the Palegar system that was there before, and just created like a more or less equal playing field in Mysore. And the Arsu community was, of course, well established in Mysore, and so was my family.
Okay.
And my parents moved out to Bangalore, of course, my father for his work here, and my mother as a homemaker. And we continued to live here pretty much like a very modern cosmopolitan sort of family here in Bangalore, but very much rooted in that Mysore culture.
Yeah.
And so that certainly played its part out, but it was a fairly normal cosmopolitan upbringing. I won't say, obviously, there is a different dynamic for rural and even Mysore, and I'm not going to say by any means it wasn't certainly to some extent privileged, because obviously living in Bangalore and having access to education and everything else, it was a much better hand dealt than the rest of the country. So that helped a lot in my own positioning today, and it certainly played its own role. So it was fun times, where you could get the weekends in Mysore were a lot more, everything we looked forward to was in the weekend to Mysore, and then on to the jungles there. Dasra wasn't the ritual and the tradition that it is now for me, because obviously then it was just family coming together, us standing and watching my father do the rituals. The entirety of the palace was this great sort of, wealth of, tradition, this place, a magical place, which it still is. But obviously, since now you're daily there and you do it, you have to be more pragmatic in your daily approach. But that obviously as a child, these things are a lot more magical. And so it was a very, I think, happy childhood. And now that is paying dividends in the sense, you're able to take that responsibility forward
Yeah.
and hopefully create more good memories, not just for your own family, but to a larger extent in Mysore as well.
So tell us more about your work with the Kalasu Foundation. What impact has it had?
Well, a number of foundations in Mysore which I work with, Kalasu being one of the prominent ones. We have my own foundation, which is an overarching umbrella foundation called Berunda Foundation. It's a special purpose vehicle that allows me to engage in various NGOs, because obviously the scope and the area which we deal with socially is not limited just to education, but all over the place. So Kalisu handles building libraries. It's a singular goal of doing that, and they've done around 120 now. The other foundation which Berunda is a stakeholder in is the Cyberverse Foundation, which looks to make Mysore a cybersecurity hub. And then there's the Pratyagraha Foundation, which is an accelerator for startups. Other than this, we're always engaging with wildlife conservation. That's like if there is any personal passion, it is in that area. And it's a addiction that has been in the family for a very long time. It's a bug that has bitten the family generation after generation. My grandfather was the founder chairman of the National Board for Wildlife. Prior to him, during Maharaja Krishnadatta's time and Yuvaraja Kantir Narasimharaj Wadiyar's time, there was a great impetus to organize the wildlife reserves around Mysore into tiger blocks so that conservation could happen. Because as we know, environmental stewardship was only a concept that came in the 60s. So the fact that Mysore state was able to do this at such an early time was really pioneering, given the tradition of hunting that was there then. Many other aspects which are now frowned upon and certainly even blasphemous in our worldview, and certainly should be so, were constrained within a conservation outlook during that time. And testimony to that is the highest amount of tiger reserves, even within Karnataka, is in the old Mysore region, from BR Hills to MM Hills to tigers are there in Kaveri Wildlife Sanctuary now, even though it's not. It should be a tiger sanctuary, but it isn't. There's tigers there as well. You have Bandipur, you have Nagarhole, you have Bhadra. All of these tiger reserves are all in the old Mysore region. The only one outside is Kali Tiger Reserve, Dandeli. So it's a testament to the fact that there was such practices then in conservation. So that's been a long association with wildlife and wanting to preserve that.
Sure.
And that, I think, is an area which needs urgent attention. It's always often overlooked. And now with all of the good behaviors and the good sort of perspectives we have about wildlife conservation, we now have excess animals. So they're coming into the estates in Kodagu, in Sakleshpur. They're coming in even in Kanakpura. So this is now a new problem which we have to fix. Before we had to fill up the forest, now we're excess. So it's playing out in its own ways. It is good news in the sense there are a lot of animals, but now India being the country that she is, how are you going to ensure that those rural populations who have as much a right to conduct or have their properties in a way that is benefiting themselves and their own livelihoods, an animal comes in and damages their crop, creates many issues, doesn't allow them to work. In Kodagu, monthly injuries happen from elephants, from tiger attacks. Certainly deaths have happened from tramplings from elephants. Many, it wouldn't be wrong to say at least once a month there is, multiple incidents a month, and once a month at least a death in Kodagu, which is certainly something we need to reduce. So these are becoming very big issues. And so excess animals also, the carrying capacity going beyond what we have is certainly an issue which needs to be looked into, and the solutions for it are very tough ones. So that has to be looked into urgently.
So do you live in the palace? And if so, what's it like? Also, I was curious, how do royal residences work?
Of course, we do live in Mysore Palace and have that great good fortune. I could not stress how much of a magical experience that is. Every day is I think we are eternally grateful for being there. It's just the energy and the and I don't know how many people believe it, but certainly there is a certain vibration to being there, and you get to just have that environment of tradition and heritage at the same time. Look at it from a modern viewpoint and understand that this is a very storied place, and you are part of this larger picture. So that has a very wonderful and I'm an experience I'm eternally grateful to have. The aspect of the residences in Mysore can be a little frustrating because it was never meant to like in the modern context of a residence, meaning there's a room and a bathroom or an ensuite, isn't the case in Mysore. It's a very traditional one where before, obviously, all the snanan mane or the bathing rooms were all outside, and the toilets also were outside. So they are in separate areas. So the traditional setup that we have now, where you come into a room, there's a living area, and then there's bedrooms, and each bedroom has a bathroom, is not the case. It is a very different matter where each room flows into the other room, and you have to segregate a space and make it as convenient for you to live in as you want. But within that is a very, I think, a unique experience, and we ourselves have a small little quarter which we've put aside where have a small little living area, a place for both sons to play, and it opens out onto the terraces, and we have our own bedroom, and I mean, very similar to a apartment structure, but of course within the palace there in Mysore. I believe at the time of when the palace was being reconstructed, they were very frustrated that there wasn't a residential wing in the Mysore palace. It was always focused on the tradition. But they never bothered like that to do it up. Bangalore like that is much more organized. Obviously, it's from a British, it was owned by a British headmaster, and he had built it according to their conveniences. And that worked out, obviously, for modern conveniences as well, very nicely nowadays. But I think Mysore is unique in of itself, and I wouldn't trade it for anything else. Our own traditional Mysore food always you can never go wrong with, but obviously you always want to try something else, and I enjoy everything from Japanese to Vietnamese to various continental cuisines. But in the palace, it's all traditional. There is no not much else that goes on. But yeah, we also within there. I don't not like make a smoothie. I don't like not have an avocado in the morning or something like that. So that's not that it doesn't happen, and they've been doing this for a fair amount of time. And whenever we want to, there is no limit on us to get whatever or eat whatever you want. But for me personally, if I am regimented, which is largely not the case for the last 2 years because of this political thing. Mornings was always after an exercise was always a smoothie and maybe eggs or something, and then afternoon would be traditional food, and evening would be usually a salad or something like that. But that is out the window now, so there's no structure to it because I'm out without breakfast usually, and you only eat lunch eventually, and that is in some corner of the constituency wherever you get whatever you get.
So the Buckingham Palace balcony is iconic, right? It's where history, ceremony, emotion meet in full view of the public. So for you, is there a place in the Mysore Palace that holds that kind of personal and symbolic significance?
Mysore Palace is just there is a lot of rooms which connect to other rooms. The front, the facade you see in front, largely is big halls which were for the traditional darbars or for some pujas or for the entertainment or for public events and ceremonies. These are largely still so, and whenever there is a public occasion, they're all utilized. There are a couple of very nice drawing rooms, which, if we have the guests who require the usage of such rooms, they are utilized. Otherwise, we have our traditional libraries and our office spaces, which we daily, my mother engages with her appointments, etc. Mine now as MP is largely outside at the public offices right next door. But those are all spaces that we engage. Rest of the palace is largely all just books, libraries, and There's a lot of records that are there from my grandfather's time. There's, of course, a tremendous amount of artifacts and many other things which have been collected over time, and there's a lot of art on the walls, etc.
Yeah.
But it's, I mean, in that sense, if there is one place which I had to single out, which has a lot of value to me prior to being anointed and then carrying forward this tradition alongside my mother, the Sabar Totiyo, where the now Ayudh Puja happens, obviously held a lot of memory for us because we used to watch from the balconies above at my father doing the pujas, etc. And now, of course, you are down doing the puja yourself. So that is, a strange thing, but also, of course, something you are
Special.
always very special for
Yeah.
us. Other than that, I love the terraces in Mysore Palace because even you can have a million people down walking around, but once you're up there, it's like somehow everything quietens down. So I think personally, I would say the terraces, but as a something that is close to my childhood and then seeing during my father's time and now, of course, in continuing the tradition, that the courtyard that is called the Savar Toti in the front. I think that is, and also the Vajramushti happens there as well. The procession for Vijayadashmi, we first come and take the salute out there and then go start. So all of it has tremendous significance.
Also, you met Trishika Kumari Singh, who also comes from a royal family before you were crowned. So how has your relationship evolved over the years, especially after stepping into such a public role together?
Well, I mean, we were arranged to be married obviously prior to my father passing away. So there was no notion of any of this would come to play. He was obviously within the community, sort of, I mean, you want to, when marriages are arranged, you look within the community, etc.
Yeah.
And she fit the bill and I fit the bill, I suppose, for her. And so we were introduced, and then subsequently, while we both got along well, agreed to be engaged, etc., that process went on. Then this happened, and we sort of both were catapulted into that. And she plays an equally, if not more, heavy role in terms of the day-to-day looking after thing will eventually be, a great part to be played by her. Of course, it's a joint responsibility, and when my father was there alongside my mother, they did everything together, and they maintained the entire tradition and the estate together. And I think that is always a dual role. And I think a woman plays a great part in sort of ensuring the household is running and also bringing, I think, that some level of beauty, stability, and sort of charm to the house and warmth to the house. And I think that only can come from the woman in the household, wherever it is, not because this is Mysore Palace or anything.
Yes.
Any household, I think its warmth comes from the sort of either maternal or the feminine side, you would want to say.
Lovely. So there have been disagreements and even legal disputes within the extended royal family over lineage and legacy. As the current custodian of this heritage, do you ever feel it's time for reconciliation? And if so, how do you see yourself playing a role in heading those divides as a royal, as a leader, and as a family member?
Well, reconciliation is always welcome, but provided it is reconciling both sides.
Yeah.
The issue comes when neither side is satisfied. It really leads to more issues than it should. Luckily for us in India, we have a great judicial system, and it looks into the laws and will determine the outcome. So I am, and my mother, of course, more than me, is very firm on the ground that she stands, and I am firm on the ground I stand, that the decisions that we have taken were in the interest of the moving forward the tradition. And apart from that, many legal issues that were there, we've taken it on firm footing as well.
Okay.
So we stand on that ground, and the courts will decide. I think that is the viewpoint that we have, and I think that is the right one for now.
Yeah.
Certainly, we're always open to dialogue. We're open to even moving towards reconciliation, but it has to be something that benefits all, rather than and benefits the aspirations of those who were before us.
Yeah.
in the agenda they set out towards going ahead. That has to be stayed through as well, because it is because of them that we are here today. And that is also a big weight which has to be considered in the decisions we make today.
Very true. And how do you maintain dignity and peace in this phase of controversy over inheritance of property?
Well, I think there is a system to solve disputes, and you should utilize that and do so. And there is no reason to fight it out on the streets or anything to get ugly in that sense. Whether it is in a personal matter or now even in public life, it has greatly helped, I think, for me to largely not bring any private or personal
Emotions.
criticisms and emotions into matters, even if the other side does. And that has been my way of working, and and certainly the way I've conducted myself before being in full public life. And it certainly will be the way I move forward as well. I think there is a great value to conducting yourself that way, and I would ask that others do the same as well. I mean, there is every opportunity for you and every right for you to criticize your opposition in public life or those that are against you, if you certainly think that their development or their policy or their behavior or whatever it may be is not in line with your own beliefs and what is a modern society and a modern India. But within that framework, there's a way to do it without getting into personal criticisms or essentially degrading or discrediting someone.
Absolutely. And do you think legacy should be defined by bloodlines or by the responsibilities one upholds?
I think, again, it's even in our household's case, nobody really looks at it in a bloodline sense. Yes, there is that heritage and that legacy which is associated with the tradition, right? That the right to conduct the festivities lies within the tradition. But today, if you remember any of my forefathers, it isn't by the many, many titles they have, but by the names that they had. So even Krishnadatta, there's Nalvadi rather, that they remember him by because of all the good works he did. So he had, of course, his own very weighted title before him, both from the Oriental, that's the British side, and then the Indian traditional side. My grandfather, for all his philosophical works, his contribution to Carnatic and Western classical, and even during the state times, bringing in, at that time, given the constraints of the Second World War, etc., very new policy, is also remembered by his own name rather than all the Maharaja, etc. And those titles were needed those days, and they certainly can be utilized in the right context. But they're all remembered by their names today. And whether it's our family, or you want to say Sayaji Rao Gaikwad, you want to say even the other chief princes of India, it may be Man Singh in Jaipur, it may be other such visionary leaders across the length and breadth of India. Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj is remembered by his name, not the whole title he had. Everybody is remembered by their names. So it is always the case that it's the work you do rather than what you have got, because there are certainly rulers who've done the opposite and done ill towards their subjects or towards the people they ruled over, and they too are remembered in name but for the wrong reasons. So it is always the case, whether it's modern politics where you're chosen by the votes of the people, or it is in that time which you inherited it by birth, that you will be remembered by the works you do.
So was there ever a scandal, historic or more recent, involving your family that truly shocked or disappointed you personally, or is there any other family scandal that shocked you?
In our own family, I don't recall anything that has shocked me or done anything such thing. There are disturbing times which certain narratives have been put on which are not at all true. When the TV serial about Tipu came on, our family were essentially portrayed as these obese and no good rulers who were just enjoying the life and eating and drinking and dancing sort of thing, whereas it was very much far from the truth. And more so in that same serial, Rani Lakshmani, whose efforts, if not for her efforts, we wouldn't be here today. She singularly endured those times of hardship, and whatever your notions about Hyder or Tipu, they certainly weren't in our family's favor, because they had taken the adhikar from us, they had taken the authority from us, and they weren't intending on letting us go forward. So she endured those times and maintained herself with a certain level of dignity. And when she came and finally Tipu was overcome and she was met by the then powers that be in the British, they found her in a small shanty, essentially,
Yeah.
a group of tents and a small little go down with the family. And from there, she resurrected the family to what it was eventually become today. I think to be portrayed as this conniving woman who is just there to deceive and to essentially be that lady, in a TV serial household who is the reason for the downfall of many, was very wrong, especially given all the work she did after getting the state back as well. From the first time that a mass vaccination drive was done, creating that notion that vaccines aren't bad during the smallpox epidemic in the early 1800s. I think her contributions and visionary sense of leadership from a very orthodox lady to allow to say that no, modern medicine is required for us to overcome this was also tremendous. And she's the one who wrote down for her grandson, that's Mumbadi Krishnadatta Wadiyar, the way forward in rebuilding the state. Because as you know, that was a completely war-torn state. 4 wars had reduced the state to economically, infrastructurally, agriculturally, absolutely nothing. There was nothing growing, there was no economy, there was refugee movement across the state into Tamil Nadu, into all other places. And there was a very tough time. And to rebuild from there, there was puja only happening at 2 temples, and which is a very culturally rich area. Resuscitating from there back to around the first war of independence, the Mysore state really came out of dire straits then. It was on her advice and her instilling that sense of duty to Mumbadi Krishnadatta Wadiyar that happened. So that I think in that TV serial, her portrayal was, I think, very extremely bad, and I think that didn't do any justice to the great work she's done.
Did you raise this up?
No, it has, funnily enough, it has got its own justice in certain ways. And this is not the occasion to talk about it, but now Rani Lakshmani's name has been greatly associated. Figures of modern, women leaders in Karnataka, such as Ms. Sudha Murthy and others, have often talked about her and her contributions, as well as the time she endured in those days as a lady to overcome 2 very ruthless rulers in Hyder and Tipu, and then get the family back to having its seat. I think that tremendous work that she did, it's getting its due now.
I understand you're passionate about playing the guitar, having started playing in your teens. Your website also says you enjoy playing the blues, jazz, 60s, 70s rock, alternative genres of music, also fond of the Saraswati Veena, probably which has helped deepen your knowledge of Carnatic music. Do you still pursue music?
I've not been able to play much over the last 1.5 years again, because obviously it used to be a routine about 20-30 minutes in the morning to just take the guitar and play. I never did it in a strict sense of like taking exams, etc. Okay. We had this thing in international, when I went into international school, where to dedicate certain hours to learning a different craft. It could be art to whatever you want. Doing community service, and then something else. So 3 things of 50 hours each. So for me, for the art side, I did mostly on the guitar, and it just stuck sort of. And then when I went to the US, I largely taught myself. Here there was an instructor who came, all the chords and your scales, and then even getting the movements and the strength in your fingers to be able to hold all these things, etc. And the exercises was taught by him. And he gave a certain framework, and you would learn the traditional, songs like whatever, your Bryan Adams and all of that stuff, which you would learn. But I think 2 things which it allowed me to do. One was, of course, learn a musical instrument, which is, I think, magical in its own thing.
Yeah.
And it's very satisfying when you can really play an entire song or play an entire set even, and play alongside other musicians. It's a very satisfying experience. And the other thing it did was it really sort of opened up my music appreciation to a whole new genre, and then made me a lot more open to other genres, which hitherto I had never been that in depth in. And I think a lot of kids in their teens is when they really discover music and get really passionate about it. But for me, I think it, instead of going into current music, it went deeper and deeper, deeper, and went all the way back to from the classical era and the romantic era, how that branched into jazz, and then parallel to that with the, in this, of course, in the Western sense, in the South, where, of course, there was a lot of pressure on the African American community, and the blues sprung up there as an offshoot of this. That finally influenced that jazz that came out of the classical and romantic period and melded together to form that modern jazz of the Miles Davis, etc., in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and then grew into what it is today. I think that deep appreciation came because of the guitar only. I took a history of music class, and I'm very, I enjoyed that a lot. And I know I really enjoy the way, more than playing music, of course, I love playing the guitar and doing all of that. But the way it has evolved is of tremendous interest to me. And the same case for us here in our classical music here. Carnatic classical has evolved, from its early days, in the Chola time, and even the Badami and Chalukyas and all of them went in through multiple influences and other places, the coasts, and all of them bringing it together, coming through a very traditional sort of devotional side of it. And then you had the, the entire movement of where it was more localized, and you had the Haridasa and all of these movements that came in. You had Purandar Dasa and Tyagaraja and all of these people come in, and then eventually it always had a devotional side, but it also had a pragmatic side. They would sing about Ragi and all of these things as well. In the Mysore state times, how the Oriental influence came in, you had all these instruments come in from the West, and the same time our own instruments merged with that and created this hybrid, which we now think is traditional. And today you have more instruments coming in, which some of us frown upon. But it's a very interesting story. You had the Carnatic, the Maharaja of Mysore's palace band, which played all Western instruments, but he would play something like Tyagaraja's Panchratna Kirtans on there. It was a very interesting setup, and for those of us who love marching tunes and who love band, especially playing, hearing this in that context was very much mind-blowing from those old recordings. And in fact, I would say it's very much better than much of the marching tunes, etc., even for the sake of marching. Saraswati Veena is a natural progression, but of course it is not in any which way as easy as a guitar to play. And it's a completely different approach. There is no raga music as opposed to Western framework. It's completely different. It's a lot more free-flowing. It has a completely different approach to it. And so it requires you to twist your beliefs again in order to accommodate that.
So the family is known for having a vast collection of vintage cars. What are your favorites?
Yeah, so none of our cars are in our hand. Of course, they were all either sold or given away during
How sad.
post-independence, even pre-independence. Amongst the ones I suppose would be highlighted, and there are quite a few. The first I would always reference is the official state car, which was sold a long time ago. It's a very unique one-of-one probably piece. It is a one-of-one, not probably. It is a one-of-one piece because it was from Krishnadatta's time. It's a Rolls-Royce Phantom, I believe, at that time. And it was in Germany for the longest time, and it was auctioned off at a very record price. And it now sits in Qatar in the Rolls-Royce showroom there.
Okay.
Last I heard. So it is open for public view, but Mr. Johan Poonawala has one of our Bentleys and he has one of our Rolls Royces as well. Both are immaculately preserved, and I think he's done great justice in the restoration process Of course, I believe they were quite well preserved when he bought them as well, but he's added tremendous value in preserving them as well. Other than that, my grandfather had 3 Daimlers, and the story of which is very interesting. They were on their way for the king's visit to Australia, but he passed away. That is Queen Elizabeth's father. And so his demise left those cars in Madras, and they didn't know what to do, and the Australian government said, we don't need them. So these guys were like, how do we get this back now? These are very expensive cars. So my grandfather at the time stepped in and bought all 3. So those cars now, one is in the museum outside Mysore, in the Dharmasala Museum, the Payana.
Okay.
Then the other 2 are with privately held with one gentleman from Kodagu and another gentleman from Bangalore.
Okay.
And so those are very unique pieces. There is a Mysore Hispano, which is a beautiful car which won the Cartier show, which is in the G.D. Naidu Museum in Coimbatore. Then there is a very unique Invicta Black Prince, which was one of the first automatic cars, which I think it was my grandfather's car. They brought it to Bangalore from Europe, but they couldn't get the reverse to work because it was an automatic car. It was sold to the Gondal family, who got the reverse to work, and then sold it to a gentleman in Mumbai who now owns it, and that won the Cartier as well for its category. So there are a number of cars like that. If we go on, can go on forever. But they're all very unique pieces, and I'm grateful that their current owners are preserving them and taking so much joy in owning them and displaying it to the public and continuing to preserve that legacy going forward.
Also, you're an avid tennis fan, and I understand you followed the NBA closely during your time in America. You also had an interest in horse riding, is that true?
While I was in school here in Bangalore, it still wasn't the fad it is now.
Yeah.
So I never really did too much of it.
Do you still follow these sports closely, and do you get time to play tennis?
NBA certainly I follow, and tennis I follow as well. F1 I follow. I mean, now it's just highlights rather than watching the matches. If I'm in the car and I'm traveling and the signal isn't too bad, at least on the Mysore side, Kodagu, we still struggle with signal. I'll tune in live and watch. But I still follow as much as possible. I'd love to find a way to play tennis, at least in the mornings or something, some sort of structure. But yeah, Mysore has a great environment for playing sports. We just hosted a PGTA tournament at the Mysore Golf Club.
Yeah.
Yes, one of the most scenic golf clubs, if I might say. Both the Mysore Race Club and the Mysore Golf Club, I would say, are some of the most scenic clubs. In terms of racing, certainly the most scenic club is Mysore Race Club. There is no 2 doubts about it. And in terms of the golf club, I would say it ranks amongst the best, most scenic golf clubs in India. So it is something that we should develop further, and I think the governments as well should really give more impetus to having that circuit developed there.
Absolutely. So now that you've entered into politics, what really inspired you to step into this arena? And was it legacy, passion, or something else that drove you to take this decision?
It's, we've always wanted to do service.
Yeah.
And prior to joining, I always had the notion that you can do as much of good work from a private standpoint as well. And it's rather the quality of service you do rather than the position you hold. But of course, within the modern political context and the framework that India has under the Constitution, you need to be an elected representative in order to facilitate and work in a government medium to render service. And if you want that means of doing so, you have to stand up for an election and win an election and show the people that you're capable of delivering that service. Personally, of course, has seen a transformation in India in terms of leadership. Any survey will back me up in saying that the Prime Minister's rating has been through the roof, and he has continually been an inspiration, I think, for all of us youth to get into politics. Those who were especially, I think, not convinced or, in some ways, not too eager, I think, were emboldened by his approach, and that such leadership is there. I think it is a great opportunity to be in this India. And now, after the 10 years, in the 11th year, aspiring for a completely economically developed India in 2047, a long-term goal, and focusing, of course, in the short term on fixing the issues that we have, but still aiming for that long-term, 22 years ahead now, is I think a tremendous step in the right direction.
And how do you balance the role of royalty with the practical, gritty works of politics?
Well, I think that's again the same thing. What is Raja, or its codified scripturalized sense in Raj Dharma doesn't get gritty because it has to be stationed in some sort of bubble without getting into the thick of things. And politics, on the other hand, has to be dirty without being more sensitive and more sort of gentlemanly in its approach. I think that both have a middle ground, which is the actual reality of things, and that is where the work is done. Before also, if you look at my own family's case in the matter of building the KRS dam, they weren't afraid to get their hands dirty in forcing the issue, playing the politics in order to overcome all of the pressures that the Madras government was putting and getting the project overcome. And they played their fair sense of politics in doing so. But they did so in a way that was, I would say, more gentlemanly. And certainly in the political sense also now, if you want to create a change, you have to create the perspective that this is not something that is mudslinging and a really low level of discourse, but rather something that is looking at bringing about a positive change. And while we certainly will do politics, and politics is very good to be done, and I don't think you should expect a politician not to do politics also, there is a way and a means to do it in a more gentlemanly context.
Sure. Also, many believe in the curse. So, how do you personally view that legend?
Well, I mean, we as a family don't really give too much attention to it. It is something that was obviously this folklore to many great things in the world, and this is one of them. There is a rational and an irrational aspect to it if you want to get into it from a historian or an academic perspective. The rational side of me would say these curses and sort of stories were built up during the doctrine of lapse period. We weren't able to continue our lineage with an adopted heir. So how do we overcome that is to create this narrative, and that might have been there before to a certain extent, but we sort of push it to a greater agenda point. This was the politics of the time, right? How do you overcome this thing? So the rational side of me would point to that. But there's also an irrational side where, certain things have played out in certain ways. And obviously, there are people who will say that that is the working of the said curse. But I think too much importance is given to such things. You look at any family, biologically, each and every generation expecting a male heir and going forward doesn't happen anyway. It's not that they didn't have female heirs in certain cases. It's not that they didn't have male heirs. It's just circumstance. Infant mortality was so high in those days. Where did children last all the way up? Aside from that, there were so many other factors which came into place. We largely married within the community, the Arsu community. The biological factors are there. So all of these things add up, to a very rational argument. But again, as a family, I think we don't lay much not importance to it, and I think we believe that rather focusing on doing the work at hand and moving forward in a positive light will yield dividends, whatever may be the issue.
Yeah. So you've also spoken in the past about how culture should be represented. For example, the Mysore sandal soap campaign. How do you strike a balance between staying true to tradition and adapting to the modern world?
Well, I think tradition needs to be viewed from that perspective of tradition. There is a reason why certain things have worked, is because we have been strict in adhering to a certain set norms. In the Mysore sandal soap case, this is a uniquely Karnataka product and should be seen as a Karnataka product. We are not looking at it to, yes, economically we'd love for it to be the soap that the entire world uses. But there is tremendous value in holding true to the context that this is a Karnataka product. And the fact that we didn't privately own it, but let the state own it, and handed it over to Karnataka, who then subsequently changed it to Karnataka Soaps and Detergents from Mysore Soaps and Detergents, is testament to the fact that we wanted this to be for public good. That angle of it has to play out in whatever they move forward in. So it has to be, even when an ad campaign is done, it has to be to benefit Karnataka sentiments and Karnataka identity. So it is not that we don't have a lack of stars. We have sporting stars, we have film stars who are pan-India now. In fact, I would say South Indian film is largely eclipsing in many ways Bollywood. And so we have all of this here, which could have been utilized. And, you getting in a personality such as Miss Tamanna Bhatia, I believe, who, I'm sure is a renowned person and upstanding person. But the idea being that this should be a Karnataka product was somehow pushed away in that campaign. So I think there is value and weightage when it is a publicly owned Karnataka state owned commodity. It should be for the benefit of Kannadigas.
So we still hear the, what is the anthem called? Kayo.
The Kayo Shri Gauri is the
Yeah.
Mysore state anthem. Yes.
So what does that anthem represent for you, and why do you think symbols like that still matter now?
Well, it's the same reason why our national anthem, if we hear even a school playing it here, we'll all stand up and pay our respect there. The state of India has given so much to us, and we're so eternally grateful with all of the issues that we have to be born here into such a tremendous culture. Emblems or symbols that pay respect to or pay homage to that narrative and that tradition, I think are very dear to us. And Mysore state is very dear to Mysore people, and it's grown in sentiment tremendously in the present generation, I think, because that window into the past, especially given the modern issues that we face, is now a very romantic one, because that golden age of Mysore, just the way they lived then and the stories that all our elders continue to pass on to us, we want to see it in our generation and we want to experience that golden age ourselves. Why shouldn't we aspire to creating that, and why should it be only a thing of the past? And so in many ways that Kayo Shri Gauri is emblematic of that. And so it's not just from Carnatic music standpoint as being a very beautifully composed anthem, but from the sentiment it carries, I think has a tremendous romanticization and has re-energized that notion that we want, within the current context, a golden era to be seen, not just for Karnataka, but the entirety of Bharat.
Also, can you explain the significance of the royal rituals during Mysore Dasara? So what goes on behind the scenes during that time that the public doesn't usually know of?
Well, it's a very old tradition, and my family aren't the first ones to do it. There are references to Navratri being observed throughout most of our Puranas, which contain our many of the stories that of the Bharatiya Itihasa in itself, I would say. Even within our own Itihasas, that's Mahabharata and Ramayana, there is references to the rituals being done. All of it plays out in the modern Navratri context. From the Rigveda, from Indra defeating Vrittasura, to Arjuna worshipping at the Shami tree before going into battle, all of it play out in the 10-day festival. Indra, because of the rains, and we want good harvest. That is the primary reference in the Rigveda, I believe, because that was our most really nature worship that was predominant at the time, and yagna and all of that stuff which happened during that era. That plays out here. Then you have, of course, the Markandeya Purana and the Kalika Purana, all of them which have references here, which have the essence of the rituals within them, which have been drawn from there. And the 10-day festivities also has, just as the last act which we do is worship at the Shami tree, which is Durga, which Arjuna had hid his weapons there of the entire Pandavas before he went to war against the Kauravas. So when he also goes to retrieve his weapons after the last year where they had to be essentially not recognized, when he pulls out the weapons, he of course offers worship there. So we too offer worship at the Shami tree that's the last ritual we do on Vijayadashmi day. And that is also to pray for not just victory in war, because these were all warring states prior to in medieval India, especially, but also victory in all your endeavors. It's not just for war. The endeavor of running the state, overcoming evil factors that are there, evil forces that are there, overcoming whatever odds we're facing. All of that is the prayer that you do at the end. So these 10 days play that out. It has a tremendous history behind it. The Ashwamedha Yagna was the main might of the Indian dharmic state was, those that were at the time of the Guptas, etc., created that, and even the Vedic states that were there before would conduct this Ashwamedha Yagna to show their might, that nobody could challenge them in terms of their military might. That became a very, of course, expensive affair as time went on. And Navratri became the most effective way to also showcase all the tradition and the culture and have this time for prayer and ritual, but at the same time also showcase that military exuberance of the state. And certainly that reached its height in what we know as the Vijayanagara kingdom, but really should be called, as they called themselves, the Karnataka Empire. That empire, after it fell in the Battle of Talikota and then subsequently was bifurcated, and various power centers came up. Mysore being the dominant power center in Karnataka Empire, being a Kannadiga empire, Mysore took upon the mantle of conducting the Dasara festivities, the Navratri festivities. And from 1610, Raj Wadiyar started building it up, and his time itself, it was celebrated in great scale. There are references in Kantir Narsimraj Wadiyar's time of how grand the festival was. The grandest times were, of course, Chikdev Raj Wadiyar's time, and it went through a dark phase where we were only allowed to celebrate it ritualistically and symbolically within the confines of the palace and a small area of Srirangpatna during Hyder and Tipu. And when the state was restored, of course, there was a 4-5 year period probably where it was done just as a household ritual, because Tipu had essentially by then done away with us. When it was restored to us during Mummadi's time, his mother, that is Rani Lakshmani, put in the framework to a great degree, and he added on value as he became older and really brought it out in the modern context. And during Chamaraja Wadiyar's time, you had all the modern elements like the Dasara exhibition where you'd showcase all the Mysore products, and his son, that is Nalvadi Krishnadatta Wadiyar, took it to the greatest level. I said, suppose the next golden era of Mysore and of Dasara as well, where the entire romanticization about Indian royalty and the processions they had came from his time. And my grandfather's time continued that into independent India. He continued to celebrate it all the way up to 69. And then when it was evident that the purses were going to be abolished, he formally ended the public aspects of it. But the entire 10-day festivities privately within the fort complex of the Mysore Palace continues to be followed to a T to this day.
I just saw some pictures. So when these rituals are performed, you're dressed in this full royal costume, turban, sword, sherwani. Honestly, does it get heavy after the third hour of the ritual?
It is, because it's an angraka, not a sherwani. Day to day, I'm in my panche and mukta, so traditional dhoti, this silk dhoti for the rituals in the morning, which nobody sees.
Yeah.
Those pujas, which are actually the crux of what we do, which nobody sees, is there's around 3 hours in the morning and another 3 hours in the evening total, and the Mahamanglarti that happens to Devi inside the palace, etc., are the main issues. But there you're in just a dhoti, you're in the simplest of attire there. This aspect was always the public aspect, where the alongside the worship of Devi and in that context of Paramatma itself, also the idea of kingship was established, and the value of the ruler and his, as the representative of the people, having that role as well. So you would dress up accordingly as well. While doing the rituals outside, you would wear that outfit and come on. It has a lot of ritual symbolism and symbolism to the attire that is worn there. We don't carry a sword, except on the Vijayadashmi day, the Patad Khatti, that is the official thing, is being held by me while going out to place in procession. But largely we don't carry a sword. That is, the main custodian doesn't. All the others of the Arsus wear their swords when they come.
Okay.
And we do all the rituals pretty much the same way as inside. But here you're wearing this, and yes, it does get heavy. Obviously, these are silk coats which have lining and have to be given some weightage in order for it to hold itself. And apart from that, you also wear the vastras and the other embellishments, and there's jewelry and all of that, which it's part of the role and it's part of the persona you play. So you want to do it as well. So that all has to be done, and I mean, I don't think of it. You only notice it once you're taking it off.
Yeah.
So when I'm doing the ritual, you're fully into that. So I don't really notice it. It has to be ridiculously hot probably for me to notice it. And little things we do, keep a fan, keep a napkin around, all of that stuff, and make sure
You go through
one
it.
of the staff who usually helps me with getting ready, because obviously there's such a huge thing of things, is always on hand in case some small adjustment has to be made. And even this was before as well. So even the Ambari, when they used to go in procession, has a small little fan on top. So it had battery operated, and it would be switched on, because obviously it gets ridiculously hot during Dasara. So you have to adjust all those things and play that part out. Luckily, it's only 10 days of the year. So, and even in that, it's only the last 2 days, the first day and the last 2 days where there's a little heavy lifting. The other times when you're just doing darbar in the evening, it's 40 minutes. It's fairly straightforward. So
Not bad. And so what is one of the most important tradition that you believe must be preserved, no matter what?
well, obviously, Dasra has its
Yeah.
tremendous weightage, but I think it's a whole calendar of events. We divide it into Uttarayana and Dakshinayana. Generally, around Sankranti time is when Uttarayana starts, all the way to Sankramana, which Dakshinayana starts. Uttarayana is generally the festival when it's generally springtime. It's the end of winter, springtime, and summer. It's generally the time when there's less of disease, less of rains, cold is going out. So it's a more fruitful time. And that's when the observances are lesser. Then you have Dakshinayana, where usually you'd have the diseases come in, you'd have all of the colds, coughs, and all of that. And those times, those were much more serious than they are now. And so obviously the rituals increased in amount that was happening there. And naturally the course of the sun also is increasing in span of time for the daytime and decreasing then. So it's these observances is what made that ritual side of what we are in now, Dakshinayana, a lot more. And so that plays out in those rituals, and you are essentially playing out those aspirations of those people who we drew it from, not just my family, the entirety of Bharat. They put into place these rituals to that was how they overcome those tougher times, and you are paying homage to that journey while doing that today. And above and beyond that, there is a deep philosophy which I think has gone pretty much. There has been no challenge to it, in the sense there has been no overcoming the fact that it is very true in the various schools of thought that we have, both Astika and Nastika. And that has been very true today. And the ritualized aspect of that plays out in these rituals and these traditions. So we are paying homage to all of those things. And I think all of them need to be observed with the equal amount of respect. And there are certain ones for each household which are more important than the other. In the case of the palace, it's that Swarna Gauri Vrata and Varasiddhi Vinayaka Vrata, which is Gauri Ganesha Habba, and then Dasara. In between, that's Gokulashtami or Krishna Jayanti, is very important to us. There is, of course, 2 schools within that, because we are, of course, our Parkad Mat is our Rajguru, which is the Sri Vaishnava Parampare. So in that, there are so many schools of thought, etc. And there's no point in going into it now, but there's an 8-day Jatre festival, where from the Prasanna Krishna temple into the courtyard of that same Savar Totti, the procession comes with 8 different alankars on each day of Krishna. And so in this year, that is going to coincide with Dasara because of the so many alignments in the calendar this year. And then, of course, Dasara comes, and then Diwali comes, and Mysore is a very unique Diwali where it's Kamdenu Puja and Bali Padmi. That's very important for us. So all of these things play out, and you have monthly something or the other. Sankranti is very big, Rath Saptami is very big. You have, I mean, you can go on and on. Even the spring Navratri and all are of importance to us. Ram Navami, that is, all are very important to us.
Wonderful. Does your family do gifts for each other, or it's all about blessings and sweets?
I think now, because both my sons are there, a lot more of that happens. But they always used to do it before. I know my aunts and all used to say that they always used to receive, their birthday gifts and certain other, whenever the festivities were there, certain gifts which they always got. Ganesha Bhai always got the new clothes, and Yugadi you got the new clothes. Even other festivals, I remember my biological grandmother, they of course weren't officially in the palace, but they used to come for the Bali Padmi day.
Yeah.
And as children, they would all get these bag of sweets, and they would somehow have these sugared candies even those days, which were so amazing to them all.
Yeah.
And she would remember it even now, all the way up to her passing. She would go on about that story every Bali Padmi. So she always remembered that very dearly. My biological grandfather, who's still there today, will tell you of the story when his house, which is opposite the Lakshmipuram police station where he grew up, when Nalvadi Krishnadatta came driving his own chariot, so sitting on top of the, where the, you see in those old British movies with the top hat, person will sit on top. So the Maharaja sitting on top of the carriage there and driving the carriage with the horses, he came up to his house and gave a box of sweet peanuts. So that sort of thing always was there in Mysore state, and that continues now. It's a little bit more modern now in the sense, obviously the two boys are there, which are, as they both are made to do all of the puja things, and they do it very willingly and happily as well. They also get their modern day gifts or whatever they require.
And how do the royals spoil their staff during festivals?
Staff, I mean, they enjoy as much as us or more than us, and daily also they're free to do whatever in the sense of enjoying whatever comes there. I mean, we get how many sweets, etc. boxes just come in, everything goes to them, which is not a good thing, because, we don't want them eating that many sweets as well. But they enjoy the festivities. They take great pride in the fact that they are part of it as well. And they don't do it just because this is the job, but rather than this is because they are also being part of the tradition. I think that's very apparent in when they do it. For them, it's not just, it's not just the job. It's the fact that this is the joint custodianship of everyone. So while, yes, there is a formal relation in terms of employer and employee within matters of the tradition, I think this is true in every household. If there is staff and they are, been there for a while, the puja that you do at home is as much for the betterment of the staff as it is for the actual family as well.
Absolutely.
That's certainly the case in the palace as well.
How can today's youth participate in preserving India's cultural roots while embracing modernity?
As far as the built landmarks are concerned, what is in our private hands, my mother is looking after very well. She has restored the Jagan Mohan Palace. She's restoring the Rajendra Vilas Palace. Fernale in Ooty is running successfully as a hotel. The Summer Palace is also restored, and she has, that's of course a private property, and we enjoy it privately. And she has ensured its restoration and upkeep as well. Mysore Palace, of course, there's a tussle. Bangalore Palace also there's a tussle, but even in that tussle, despite us not earning revenues in the case of Mysore, we ourselves take it upon ourselves to conserve it. Bangalore, of course, earns itself a revenue, etc., and we conserve it befitting its stature. The public properties is where the challenge lies, because this is in the hands of the public. Right now, the government, in that sense, government needs to look at it as public property. The public look at it as public property, but the government needs to realize this is public property and public sentiment should be adhered to. especially when multiple experts have said that you can conserve a certain building, you should be willing and able to do so. And again, I think the policymaker has failed in this aspect, that we have not given a criteria within our contractual bids, etc., for restoration. There is only new construction and demolition and reconstruction. There is no idea of different ways of construction using this chukki, mortar, all of this stuff. There is no scope at all in the Indian, like the government bids and the contracts, etc., that go out for these buildings. And I think that has to architecturally come back, because we have largely our towns, or even our cities, have lost all aesthetic sense, and there is no direction which we are going in which lends any uniqueness to any city. I can be in a town in Piriyapatna and walking down, and if you remove the signs which it says Piriyapatna, could be any town in any city in India, any township in India. And that, I think, the uniqueness of each town which was there before is largely gone now. One more thing, we used to adhere to local environment, local building practices, and that was very environment friendly. You know, all the sustainability movement we had now was already there then, and the buildings were built from the materials available locally and to the aesthetics and the environment that was locally around them as well. So it lent itself very well. That is largely gone now with all the RCC buildings. So somewhere in this whole socialist era of India, where everything was the most pragmatic and the most utilitarian sort of buildings, we've lost that entire aesthetic of India. And an architectural revolution, I think, is much needed for India going forward. So it's in that sense that I say that only if you preserve this built heritage of Mysore, some of Bangalore as well, whatever is remaining, will you know the journey we have come from and what we have to do in forward. I am all for modern conveniences. I in fact say heritage buildings should have every modern convenience, but keeping that framework of the heritage building alive, not reconstructing it, but doing it as it was done before, because it all use local materials, and those are more in alignment with the local environment than the concrete or the cement and everything which we use today.
What's a typical day off look like for the Maharaj of Mysore?
Any time off, I am immediately heading to the jungles around Mysore.
Oh, how
So
interesting.
that would be, I would be making a beeline either to Bandipur or Nagarhole. And luckily, my part of Hunsur within Mysore district and part of Virajpet in Kodagu. So I get to pass through that so many times. So I get that itch scratched very often to just pass through. Not that I'm doing any safaring or photography or anything. It's just going through, and then you get like this bonus of some late evening, you know, when you enter the gate at around 6, just before closing time. When you're passing through, you'll see like a tiger or something, and it's happened once. I've done it multiple times, but it's happened once. So that's just the bonus of having to represent such a wonderful constituency.
Yes.
And yeah, but any day off would be a beeline right there. Other than that, any day off would be just staying at home. I think that itself is a holiday now.
Since becoming a father, has your perspective on your role and legacy shifted in any way? What kind of values do you hope to pass on to your children?
Well, I think you have to do what you were doing before continuously to show that that is what is the value that you have. They're going to learn only by example, and certainly in my case also that was what I saw. Those before me doing all the rituals so strictly, despite all the odds they faced, showed that that had so much value to them. And I think that is what we need to enshrine in them as well. And I think they will learn from that aspect. Obviously, personally in becoming a father now, the priorities are elsewhere. Everything is from your children's viewpoint, and that is first taken into account before you do everything else. So you can't just, do any random thing like as free as you were before. Even as a couple, we were so much, obviously you will be more freer. But I think that is a great development in the sense that you have responsibility now, and if you can be a good family man or a good family woman,
Yeah.
I think that is a building block towards leadership in a greater context as well.
So many books have been written about the Wadiyar Dynasty. Which ones would you suggest to our listeners who are keen to understand about the history, Mysore history?
The entire history, both the myth and the actual history, compiled together in G.R. Joycer's book. There's a very pragmatic one and lengthy one in Vikram Sampat's Royal Splendor of Mysore. There is a couple other books that focus only on Nalodi Krishnadatta's time. There are a couple of Kannada books that focus on my grandfather's reign.
Okay.
But the best account, of course, that is there, but it's only till the demise of Tipu, is from Haivadan Rao, who was the professor at the University of Mysore. And he compiled it purely in an academic sense. So there is no storytelling, or not that these authors are trying to tell stories here. They are, of course, putting it into the aspect of wanting to sell a book. But Haivadan Rao was purely academic in the sense he was writing it for documentation. So he unfortunately passed away before he could complete post Tipu. But his compilation up till then is probably the most expansive and accurate, with references to all from inscription stones to documents to court chronicles to coins to whatever you can find as a source material.
How would you like history to remember you?
I've thought that deeply into such things. I don't see myself certainly in the context of history or anything like that. I think I largely see myself as in the custodianship of the palace, if I am able to continue to uphold what my mother now has taught me and will eventually pass on to me, and have my children and then their forerunners follow those same tenets. I think that would be a satisfactory outcome for me in all senses. Other than that, personally for me, if I am able to contribute within the field of, again, personal passion of mine of wildlife and conservation, and ensure that some balance is brought there, that would be a very satisfactory personal outcome for me. But yeah, I haven't thought of myself within the context of history, or for that matter, to be remembered or not. I think is left to the work that we do ahead of us. I think focusing on that is the important aspect, rather than what or who will remember us.
So our editor had a question. Historians have often compared Mysore to Kashmir, both princely states with deep history. While Mysore has stayed unified and grown into a symbol of harmony, Kashmir remains complex. So what do you think contributed to Mysore's enduring stability?
Our values, etc., were largely in line of India. Mysore always looked at itself, and Karnataka does to this day in its modern avatar, as being birthed out of India. Our own state anthem, that is Jai Bharat Janani Tanujate Jai He Karnataka Mate, literally says we are birthed from the womb of Bharat. So we never looked at ourselves as apart from Bharat, even when it was the kingdom of Mysore. It was just the political and the princely context that there was a border around there, but in the cultural context, were always Bharat. So Mysore never had that issue. I think Kashmir's issue is largely that. There were, I'm sure, very good things done by the rulers there. But if you don't have a belief that this is part of Bharat, and the population is frequently and often told that you have a different identity, they will continue to do so. But Kashmir, to this day, our Shaivism comes from there. Our entire greatest works, perhaps, of our scripture and our understanding of India comes from there. Perhaps the only well-chronicled pre-medieval history of India, which is actually tells about actual history rather than focusing on the Puranas, comes from Kashmir. So you have this tremendous attachment to Bharat. Yet the local population, I believe that sentiment is changing now, but the local population at one point in time didn't believe so. That was the challenge there, and I think that's what happened in that case.
So, was there ever a moment in your life when you questioned whether you wanted to take on this role? Did you ever feel the pull to choose a completely different path, one that had nothing to do with royalty or tradition?
Well, I'm largely a very pragmatic person on the whole, so I don't really think about other things. But every human is liable to romanticize other opportunities and other paths in their lives, and I think certainly I've done my fair share. But at the end of the day, I think it's again the path in front of you. I think largely you don't have much choice. You are given, or rather, you're dealt a certain hand, and you have to play the game alongside that. So I think this is the role you're given, and you have to follow through.
We'll jump to the rapid fire.
Please.
Mysore Palace or Bangalore Palace?
I would say, Mysore Palace obviously is just the more private in the sense it's because it's larger. So you will never know you are part of. There's so many tourists and there's so many people coming. You would never know that when you're at our either at my quarters or where my mother is or in the residential wing. You would never know. So it gets quiet there, despite lakhs of people coming every month. So for that sake, obviously Mysore, but I don't think there's a more charming place than Bangalore Palace. Of course, now with all the exhibitions and marriages and all that, there's a bit hangama, but I know from my youth, etc., when there was nothing going on there, it was probably like the closest thing to fairyland that we knew was Bangalore Palace, and especially when you have that, whatever you want to say about our Oriental phase, they didn't build bad buildings. So that always was a very romantic thing there.
The best Mysore Pak you've ever had?
I always gift, and I think we'll go to that only, is the Indra Cafe one.
If you could go back and change something about your life or do differently, what would that be?
I'd say I'd slow down a lot of things.
If you could swap lives with anyone for a day, who would that be?
I don't know, maybe someone who's just absolutely normal, like just to enjoy a very normal day in India. I think I would like that as well.
What's one aspect of daily life in the royal household that would surprise the average person today?
The amount we do ourselves. Everybody thinks we have like 10 people to do 10 things, including switch on the lights or something. Largely we do everything ourselves.
Top travel destination?
Just say jungles all the time. So I would...
Have you gone to Africa?
Yes, so I would say if you want to, India has tremendous jungles, length and breadth of India, and worth traveling every corner of them. If you would corner me and say, no, you have to say something outside of India, I would say probably Kruger or the Kalahari.
What's something about you most people wouldn't expect?
What people, again, always tell me about is they never expect us to approach things so pragmatically or as they say simply, but for us it's just pragmatism. I think the value of life is living it simply.
What's your go-to music playlist when you're relaxing?
I think a great now development in what they say is acid jazz, or this basically what's coming out of Turkey. Yeah. A lot of the influence there from bands such as Krogbin and then now Glass Beams, who I think are coming to Bangalore in October to play Charles Mingus album, and that relaxes you a lot. Mornings generally I do a lot of traditional Carnatic and have that playing as well. So
what books are you reading currently?
It is called Swayam Bodha and Shatru Bodha.
Okay.
I think it's Pankaj Saxena, if it's the author, if I'm not mistaken.
Are there any comic book characters or fantasy heroes you identify with? Because I know you read a lot when you were young.
Yeah, of course. I read a lot of Batman. Just it was this dark, very approachable, meaning in the sense it didn't feel very cartoony. It was very real. Of course, it's as fictional as can be. But it just, I think the comics there, the tone that they took was really engaging and made for very good stories.
If you had the power to revive one ancient Mysorean law or custom today, what would that be?
The bands, they used to play at every corner, including here in just Chamaraja Park or Cubbon Park here. There's a bandstand and the band would come and play. And now it's only in Mysore Palace, and that too they don't even wear all their regalia, it's just in the police outfits and stuff, which is fine, but I think for the occasion, wearing the band regalia and coming in and playing at every corner. It used to be at Bangalore Palace, it used to be here in Cubbon Park in Bangalore, and there were various other places where they would play. I would love for that to happen every Sunday.
I didn't know this. Finally, in just one sentence, what does true change mean to you?
Positive change essentially means you are bettering someone's life, and the change has resulted in them being a better person, not just for their own good, but for those around them and for the society they live in. I think that is the change we all need.
Thank you so much. I'm in awe of your knowledge and the depth of things that you know. And this was such an enlightening and great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and lovely to be here, and thank you so much for all your hospitality.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on this insightful conversation with His Highness Yaduveer Wadiyar. We hope you enjoyed exploring the intersection of legacy and leadership with us. If you found this episode interesting, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the Expressions podcast by the New Indian Express. We've always got more thought-provoking guests and powerful stories coming your way every Friday, right here on the New Indian Express YouTube channel. Until next time, keep listening and keep expressing.